Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today is characteristics of quadratic equations. So if you remember, a quadratic equation is something that looks like this. The highest power in it is x to the 2 power. It's always going to be in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c, okay? Now, a is always going to be the number in front of x squared. So if I look here, what's the number in front of this x squared? Well, there isn't one, so what number can we assume it is? If there's no number, it's going to be a 1. So a equals 1, okay? Now, b is the number in front of just the x, so what number is in front of this? Be careful, it's a negative 4. We got to be accurate with that. b is equal to negative 4, okay? And c is always that number by itself, so c in this case is equal to what? 5, okay? We're going to use this information to answer these questions about this quadratic equation, okay? So the first question we're always going to ask you is, does it open up or down? So the way you know whether it opens up or down is you're going to look at my A, okay? Is A positive or negative, okay? So if your A is positive, here, let's scoot this over. If your A is positive, it's going to open up. So it's going to open up like this, where the opening is at the top. If it's negative, it's going to open down. So is this A positive or negative? Well, it's positive, so that means this is going to open up. Okay? The next thing you're going to look at is your y-intercept. Okay? So the next thing I want for you to describe is the y-intercept. The y-intercept you can always find by plugging in 0 in for the x's. So if I plug a 0 into here, that goes away. And if I plug a 0 into here, 0 times negative 4 is going to give me 0. So what's the only thing that I always have left when I'm looking for my y-intercept? That back number, that's c. So your y-intercept's always going to be your c. And I need this as ordered pairs. So since we plugged in a 0 for x, 0 goes into the x spot. And what was my y value? It was just that c is going to be 5. Okay? So my y-intercept for this is 0, 5. Okay. The next thing I'm going to find is my axis of symmetry. Okay? Symmetry. Okay? So the way you find your axis of symmetry is you're going to use the equation x equals negative b over 2a. Okay? X equals negative b over 2a. Well, I know what b and a are. I've already identified them, so all I'm going to do is plug it into this equation. Now, be very careful with this. This negative has to be there. And then what does my b equal? b equals negative 4. I'm going to put parentheses, and I'm going to put that negative 4 in that spot. Okay, so be careful. This equation is set. It's negative b. So you have to put that negative, and then remember, put parentheses if you're going to plug in, if you're going to substitute something in. So I want parentheses negative 4. And then 2 times, what's my a? My a is 1. So this gives me x equals negative. Negative becomes a what? Positive. So it's going to be 4 over 2. So x equals 2. And that's how I have to write my axis of symmetry. It's going to be x equals 2. Okay? Now, to find my vertex, okay, your vertex is always going to be an x comma y. Well, I just found an x value. My x value for this is 2. So if I know my x value is 2, what I can do is take that, plug it into my equation, and find that missing y value, okay? So y in this case is going to equal, I'm going to plug it into here. So again, when I plug it in, I want parentheses, so I want the 2 around parentheses, squared, minus 4 times, again, I see another x, I'm going to put in that 2, and then plus 5, okay? So 2 squared gives me what? Remember, 2 squared means 2 times 2, which is going to give me a 4, minus 4 times 2 gives me 8, plus 5, y equals, so this case, y equals 4 minus 8 is going to give me negative 4 plus 5. So this is going to give me a 1. So my vertex is going to be 2, 1. Okay? Now, the next thing we're going to ask is, does this quadratic equation have a maximum, which means maximum means it's that it has a very top value, or a minimum, which means it has a very bottom value? So what we're going to do is we're going to go back up here and look at this up or down situation. So if I look here at this little graph, this little mini graph I drew over here, if I look, these go on and on forever. So this one doesn't have a top because these go on forever, but it does have a bottom. So if it opens up, it has a minimum because it has a bottom. This, on this graph, these go on forever and ever and ever, so this doesn't have a bottom. What it does have is a top. So that means when it opens down, it actually has a maximum. So in this case, did ours open up or down? It opened up, so we're gonna look at this graph. This has a bottom, so we have a minimum. Okay? Now, the last question we're going to ask you is what is the maximum minimum value? Okay? So again, since we have a bottom, we have a minimum value. And remember, this bottom point, we've already found that. That was our vertex. And what I want to know here is, well, what's the y value of that vertex? And we already found that the y value of my vertex is going to be 1. Okay? So this is the way you're going to find out all the characteristics. Just follow along with my work, and you should be able to do this for all the rest of your questions, okay? So that's what we got for today. Let's go.